Pete Hegseth sat with his signature half-smirk, feet planted confidently beneath the news desk, as the panel show opened with rapid-fire commentary on the state of American justice. The studio was buzzing with live energy, but no one could ignore the tension humming between him and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The two had crossed paths on social media before sharp retweets, indirect jabs, but this was their first face-to-face clash on national television, and everyone sensed sparks were about to fly. Hegseth, a former Army officer and right-wing commentator, had made a name for himself by confronting progressives with the kind of bullish flag-waving rhetoric that appealed to his base. He wasn't there for dialogue, he was there to dominate. Crockett, on the other hand, was no stranger to confrontation either. A civil rights attorney turned rising Democratic star, she'd already become known for her directness, legal precision, and a style of cool defiance that made pundits nervous and supporters electrified. The topic for the day: criminal justice reform. As the host laid out questions about rising incarceration rates, police accountability, and systemic disparities, Pete Hegseth leaned into his role. With practiced ease, he launched into a monologue laced with veiled sarcasm and performative. Outrage. You know what the problem is, Hegseth said, looking straight into the camera like a sermonizing preacher. We've allowed radicals to redefine justice. People like Congresswoman Crockett would rather protect the feelings of criminals than protect actual citizens. They cry racism every time we ask for accountability. It's soft and crime politics dressed up as activism. A few scattered claps came from the audience. Hegseth glanced at Crockett with that smug, Fox-worthy confidence, waiting for her to fire back in anger. That was the playbook. Poke the progressive, get them emotional, then dismiss them as irrational. But Jasmine didn't bite. She sat poised, her expression unreadable. Not angry, not defensive, just focused. There was a brief pause as the host motioned for her to respond. Crockett leaned forward, placed her hands on the table, and met Hegseth's stare without blinking. Her voice was calm, steady, and devastatingly precise. When your truth is weak, your insults always get louder. That was it. 12 words. The room seemed to freeze for a second. The audience collectively inhaled. The panel fell silent. Even the host, normally quick to move things along, paused. With wide eyes, the camera lingered on Hegseth's face, which had lost its smirk entirely. His lips pressed together, his eyes darted for a comeback, but none came. Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't name-call. She didn't even list statistics or quote policy. She simply held up a mirror, and in that moment, Pete Hegseth saw himself reflected in it. Loud, righteous, and wrong. What followed was a subtle but visible shift in the room's energy. Crockett sat back in her chair unbothered. Her confidence wasn't performative, it was the kind that came from doing the work, knowing her facts, and refusing to be shaken by noise. Hegseth, on the other hand, suddenly looked like someone who had brought a hammer to a chess match. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips of the exchange hit Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube with captions like "Mic Drop of the Year" and JasmineCrockett.com/cool and cruel in the best way. One tweet racked up 4 million views in an hour. Pete Hegseth got verbally body-slammed by a 12-word truth bomb. Play it again. What no one had expected least of all Hegseth was that a single sentence delivered with surgical grace could silence a man who built his career on verbal aggression. But that was Crockett's power. She didn't fight fire with fire. She absorbed the flame and returned it as light-cutting, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. By the time the show wrapped, it was clear that the most powerful moment hadn't come from a shouted argument or dramatic interruption. It had come from stillness, from clarity, from a woman who understood that strength doesn't need to yell to be heard. And Pete Hegseth. He sat quietly through the rest of the segment, trying to recover his footing, but it was too late. Damage was done. He'd underestimated her once. He wouldn't make that mistake again in the days following the viral showdown. The internet turned Jasmine Crockett's 12-word reply into a phenomenon. News outlets replayed the clip on loop. Talk shows dissected every facial reaction. And political strategists quietly admitted they hadn't seen such a clean takedown in years. But beyond the headlines and memes, something more meaningful began to unfold. Crockett wasn't just trending, she was transforming the national conversation.